Smokehammer Town frequently reports missing persons. A young girl is stalked by a mysterious van driver. Can she, a survivalist, escape the looming threat with her alertness? Recently, a small town in Florida, USA, has seen a series of women disappearances. Criminals often appear at night, abducting lone girls. She always drives a distinctive white van during her actions. That evening, young girl Annie was hurrying home after school. Feeling followed, she quickened her pace. Even at her doorstep, she remained suspicious. Just as she was investigating, her brother Tommy suddenly appeared, startling her. It seemed her earlier unease was just her oversensitivity. At night, Annie went to feed the horses and saw a white van parked by the road near her home. She cautiously approached the vehicle and advised the driver to leave. As per usual, private property prohibits random parking. Unexpectedly, the van driver remained indifferent. Annie planned to confront the driver, but the van's lights flashed, seemingly in defiance. Startled by the action, Annie hurriedly ran back home. Meanwhile, her mother and sister Daisy were arguing over trivial matters, ignoring Annie's words. Annie, anxious, raised her voice, but Daisy, in anger, lashed out at her, accusing her of overreacting. Maybe the person was just resting temporarily, hence parking by the roadside. Why not be more tolerant instead of driving them away? Daisy, frustrated, was only concerned for the family's safety, hence the reminder. Recently, young girls have been disappearing frequently, making them prime targets for criminals. But as Annie finished speaking, her sister burst into laughter. "No one would care about you, fatty. With your looks, you're definitely safe. Criminals would avoid you." Annie, mocked by her sister, felt the tension peak. Since no one cared, she locked her door and went to sleep. The next morning, everything seemed normal, and Annie finally relaxed. But during recess, she saw the white van near the school again. Annie's tension returned. At that moment, a curly-haired young man approached her. Annie liked him, and after chatting, she forgot about the van. After school, Annie and her friend Susan walked home together. They chatted and laughed, feeling relaxed. But unsettlingly, the white van followed them again. Annie became alert, quickened her pace, and quietly informed her friend. Susan, instead of being scared, picked up a stone and threw it at the van. Perhaps sensing hostility, the van paused briefly before driving away. Annie tried to see the driver's face, but the tinted windows made it impossible. Nervously returning home, Annie saw the van boldly parked at her doorstep. Confused, she saw a man in blue overalls repeatedly coming out of the house. Startled, Annie wanted to flee but tripped in her panic. The man, with a menacing look and a hammer, extended a hand to help her up. Terrified, Annie couldn't accept his help. Seeing her refusal, the man turned and left. Annie, still shaken, learned from her family that the man was a repairman hired by her father. Though it seemed a misunderstanding, Annie's intuition told her recent events weren't coincidental. Calming down, Annie helped her brother practice shooting. As a survivalist, she's always prepared. On Halloween Eve, with her parents and sister out, only Annie and her brother Tommy were home. They brought out prepared pumpkins to make decorations. Soon, they excitedly carried their finished jack-o'-lanterns outside. But then, Tommy noticed the van parked outside. Annie quickly brought Tommy inside, and they returned with a BB gun. Tommy shot at the car. Seeing his poor aim, Annie took the gun, shooting while approaching the van. Only when the window was marked by BBs did the van slowly drive away. Feeling slightly relieved, they relaxed a bit. That night, Annie hid in her room, enjoying music. Through the curtain gap, she saw a red dot light up in the distant corner. Looking closer, she saw someone hiding, smoking, and glancing at her. Annie quickly closed the curtains and sat on the floor, breathing heavily. It seemed someone was targeting her, explaining the constant stalking. Luckily, her father's return calmed Annie's fears. With family together, no stalker would dare break in. As Annie expected, the mysterious person kept watching them. The family watched TV, and Annie saw the person again. Though it was dark, the glowing cigarette revealed her position. Hearing Annie scream, her father rushed out with a gun. With a loud bang, everyone tensed up. But soon, her father returned, looking dejected. He found nothing unusual except for a pesky rat. Annie stayed worried while others felt relieved. Annie wanted to share her experiences, but they thought she was overreacting. Recently, a white van without a license plate appeared in the city. Several girls were attacked, taken when alone, and vanished. Annie's worries weren't unfounded, but her family didn't take them seriously. The next morning, Annie was too scared to go to school, so her parents had her sister Daisy drive her. Although Daisy was reluctant, she didn't dare defy her parents' wishes. At school, Annie seemed distracted. Her best friend Susan reminded her that the tall boy Rocky had been watching her, perhaps secretly admiring her. But Annie, recalling the recent encounters with the helmet and stocking, lost any interest in romance. After school, Annie quickly locked the doors and windows. To eliminate potential threats, she suggested to her parents during dinner to install sturdier doors and windows and better locks. Though her parents thought she was overreacting, they reluctantly agreed for Annie's peace of mind. However, when to make the changes remained uncertain. In the early morning, Annie rode her horse to the field and saw the white van again. In fear, the van suddenly started, as if ready to chase her. Annie jolted awake from her nightmare, unable to sleep again, and heard strange noises downstairs. She grabbed her gun and cautiously went downstairs, finding the door wide open, as if someone had broken in. This made her even more nervous. Just then, a large hand patted her shoulder. Annie turned around nervously, only to find it was her father. She sighed in relief, thankful it was just a false alarm. Time flew by, and it was soon Halloween. During this time, Annie hadn't seen the eerie van again and gradually relaxed. The class was preparing for a Halloween party, and everyone was excited, including Annie. Her sister Daisy, upon learning Annie was attending the party, surprisingly supported her and even offered her cherished makeup to help Annie dress up. On Christmas Day, Annie wore a cowboy outfit and rode her horse. She appeared at the party, and although her entrance was unique, her outfit was a bit conservative, drawing some teasing from classmates. Annie didn't mind, focusing on enjoying herself and staying true to herself. As the light music played, everyone sang and danced, creating a lively atmosphere. Happy times are always short-lived. Due to the distance from home, Annie and Susan had to leave early. The boy Rocky came to say goodbye and gave her a kiss, inviting her to swim together. Annie was reserved on the outside but thrilled inside, surprised at how easily love found her. With a hint of reluctance, Annie and Susan headed home as the sky darkened. Suddenly, they saw the haunting white van parked by the roadside, as if plotting something. Annie and Susan tensed up, exchanged glances, and then galloped away on their horses. The white van immediately started chasing in their direction. To escape, Annie and Susan split up, but the van, like a vintage car, relentlessly pursued Annie. She had to turn her horse towards the dense forest. Unfortunately, the horse, untrained, stumbled, and Annie fell off. The van driver seemed to enjoy the chase, slowing down like a cat playing with a mouse. Annie got up, stumbled into a ditch, and the van driver parked nearby, starting to search. He reached the ditch where Annie was hiding, but found nothing. Annie had sneaked under the van while the driver was distracted. The most dangerous place is often the safest. The van driver never imagined his prey was hiding under his vehicle. Annie's bravery and wit helped her escape. The driver, finding nothing, left in frustration. Meanwhile, Susan returned home and immediately called Annie to check if her best friend was safe. Coincidentally, Annie's sister was on the phone, and the landline was unavailable. As night deepened, Annie searched and finally found her horse in a nearby clearing. She struggled to lead it home. After returning, Annie habitually went to tie up the horse, only to find the van driver waiting in the stable. The thug grabbed Annie by the neck, lifting her off the ground. As Annie struggled to breathe, he threw her down and began tying her up. The van driver seemed to have a twisted pleasure in tormenting his prey. In a critical moment, Annie glanced at the nervous horse and suddenly had an idea. She remembered when she and her brother were feeding the horse, and mischievous Tommy almost got kicked. Luckily, Annie's quick reflexes prevented a disaster. Now, the van driver foolishly stood behind the horse, giving Annie a chance to turn the tables. She rolled aside and called the horse's name loudly. With a neigh, the horse kicked back hard, sending the van driver flying. Annie seized the opportunity to escape the stable. The strong driver, though hit hard, wasn't fatally injured and slowly got up. Annie stumbled ahead, shouting for her family, but the loud rock music from the record player drowned out her cries. She was eventually caught and knocked out by the driver, who threw her into the van. Moments later, Annie awoke from unconsciousness. While the driver focused on driving, she grabbed a wrench and struck his head. Caught off guard, the driver was severely injured. Annie took the chance to open the door and run home. Inside, Daisy was still on the phone. Annie banged on the door, finally catching Daisy's attention. Before the van driver could return, Annie managed to get inside. The sisters locked the door and ran to the bedroom to hide. The driver, however, didn't give up, and with no other family members home, the sisters barricaded the bedroom door, praying he'd leave. They wanted to call the police, but the phone was in another room. They quickly blocked the door with a cabinet, but the driver was faster, breaking the main door with a crowbar and starting to dismantle the bedroom door. With nowhere to hide, the sisters had to jump out the window. Daisy. Annie followed, but the driver grabbed her hand. In a struggle, the driver suddenly let go, causing both girls to fall from the roof. The driver climbed out the window, glaring down menacingly. Through the dim light, they saw the van driver was a fierce-looking middle-aged man. The sisters, though sore from the fall, were unharmed. They helped each other outside and saw the van still with its lights on. Without hesitation, they got in, but unfamiliar with the vehicle, driving was awkward. Annie drove nervously, glancing back, and the vehicle suddenly stopped after hitting something. This worried the sisters as the driver smashed the window, grabbing Daisy. Annie quickly shifted to reverse and floored the gas. The driver couldn't hold on and let go. Just as the vehicle got free, the wheels got stuck in the mud again. In desperation, Annie shifted gears, and the van finally broke free, speeding towards the driver. Unable to dodge, he was hit head-on. Annie and Daisy hadn't recovered from the shock when police cars arrived. It turned out their friend Susan, unable to reach Annie, had called the police. When the officers checked under the van, the driver was nowhere to be found. Soon after, the police found multiple victims' bodies based on clues from the van. The notorious serial killer continued his spree. The story ends here. The movie The Van was directed by Skeels in 2003. The film is cleverly conceived and full of creativity. The director deliberately avoided showing the villain directly, instead building a dark and mysterious killer image through subtle details. In this gripping thriller, we follow this protagonist through everyday life and fear, with danger lurking in the unknown darkness, revealed when least expected. Without excessive gore, it delivers a powerful impact. What do you think of this creative and surprising story? Feel free to leave a comment below. That's it for this video. Thank you for your continued support. See you next time.